Greetings once again, my friends. I'd like to welcome you to another video. My fellow modelers, my fellow Star Trek fans, my fellow lovers of Titanic, my fellow historians, and my fellow lovers of everything interesting. I'd like to welcome you to another video. And if this is the first time you're coming to my channel, thank you very much. I've got a wide variety of interests, and I hope you find my channel entertaining and informative. Now, not that long ago, I had done a video on Dr. Robert Ballard's Bismarck. And Robert Ballard was kind of a childhood hero of mine. And when it comes to my Titanic projects and my Titanic-related information, I get a lot of my knowledge from him and his books. Same thing with Bismarck. I've done a history of the Bismarck, and I got a lot of information from Dr. Ballard. Well, I just got a new book by Dr. Robert Ballard, and new in the sense that I just got it, but it's not new. It's Robert Ballard's R.M.S. Lusitania. So I got a new book to share with you guys with a new ship, and this is from Dr. Robert Ballard, and this is for the R.M.S. Lusitania. I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, one of the things that I like doing when I have books or history of videos that I do is I like having some kind of a referral, whether it's a model kit box or a model itself. When it comes to the Lusitania, I don't actually have a model built yet. This one is the NTEX 1/350 scale Lusitania, but this one's in really good condition, and that one is still in the plastic wrap. So I'm not going to open this one, but I do have one to build, and that one is from Revell. It's the Revell 1/350 R.M.S. Lusitania, and it'd be interesting to see if it was the same mold that NTEX uses. But I'll be doing a video on that, a whole build series where we're going to build the R.M.S. Lusitania, and of course we're going to light it. You guys that know my channel, you know how much I love lighting things. And I have shown you the Mauritania. That was the Airfix. That was a really smaller model. I don't know if I'm going to do that one or not, but we are going to do the Lusitania. Again, that's going to be Revell. But getting back to the content of this video, I want to talk about Dr. Robert Ballard. He's always been one of my childhood heroes, and to this day, I've done numerous references to the R.M.S. Titanic, the Bismarck, the Lusitania, and a lot of the information that I've gotten is from Dr. Ballard. I've got a couple of Titanic books from Dr. Ballard, and also I have the ship Magnificent from Titanic. That's like the best, the absolute best reference material. I've shown you Dr. Ballard's Bismarck, when he found the Bismarck. Today we're going to take a look at the R.M.S. Lusitania. And you can see the picture on the cover as she appears in just about 300 feet of water off of Old Head, probing the mysteries of the sinking that changed history. You may or may not know, it was the sinking of Lusitania that eventually put the United States into World War I. On the back, the dust jacket, you can see the picture of the explosion that ultimately sank the ship. On May 7th, 1915, a torpedo from a German submarine hit the elegant Cunard liner Lusitania. In less than 20 minutes, the ship sank, taking the lives of 1,195 people. For years, this great maritime tragedy was shrouded in controversy. Was the Lusitania carrying munitions? Why was there a second explosion? Now this book, Underwater Explorer, Robert Ballard's history, making findings are revealed as he probes the length of the haunting wreck in search of clues. And you can see a picture of the submarine, the submersible. And this is ISBN 100-7858-2270. And I'm sorry, but I tried to get this off. This was from the store. It was called Ollie's, and I don't know why they would have put it on like that, but I can't get that off. So anyway, there's so much information on this book. I would love to go through it page by page with you guys, kind of like Robert Ballard's Bismarck book. So I got a bunch of areas that I want to talk to you about that I think will be interesting. Looking on the inside, you can see a picture illustration of the Lusitania as she sank. "Avenge the Lusitania" was the slogan emblazoned on British recruiting posters during the second year of the Great War in May of 1915. A German torpedo sank a sleek Cunard liner Lusitania, taking 1,195 civilian lives. The sinking turned world opinion against Germany, and the deaths of 123 American passengers was the first step in bringing the United States into World War I. But almost from the moment the torpedo was fired, controversy has surrounded the Lusitania. Why did she sink so quickly? Why was there a second explosion? Had the liner been carrying munitions for the British? Did Winston Churchill, then First Sea Lord, allow the sinking in the hope that it might draw America into the war? Rumors of conspiracy and cover-ups surrounding the liner. And 80 years later, she is still a ship of mystery. In August of 1993, Dr. Robert Ballard, a discoverer of Titanic and Bismarck, led an expedition to the wreck of Lusitania off the coast of Ireland in search of answers. Using a small submarine and remote-controlled camera vehicle, Ballard and his team studied the wreck like underwater detectives trying to solve a murder mystery. Their high-quality image of the shattered wreck shed light on the cause of the sinking, and that her at the bottom in minutes. Ballard's conclusions are authoritative and provide a fascinating, definitive account of what happened on that fateful May afternoon. That was the front half of the dust cover. On the back part, you can see a picture of Dr. Ballard. The man who brought the world the Titanic now reveals the most mysterious liner of them all. Dr. Robert Ballard, although the best known as discoverer of lost ships, may have additional credits to his name. One of the world's leading maritime geologists, he spent more time exploring the deep oceans in submarines than any other scientist. At the world-renowned Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, incidentally, which is really cool because that's like an hour from me, has been instrumental in the development of new underwater exploration technologies such as the Argo, Jason, a system that was used to explore Titanic and the Bismarck. He is also the founder of the Jason Foundation for Education, a nonprofit organization that uses state-of-the-art technology to involve students in the excitement of scientific discovery. Since 1988, Dr. Ballard has taken over 400,000 school children on live electronic field trips to explore Roman shipwreck on the floor of the Mediterranean Sea, and to view the sunken sailing vessels from the War of 1812 on Lake Ontario. Spencer Dunmore worked closely with Robert Ballard in his research, organization, and writing of this book. Canadian writer, he is the author of several books including Wings for Victory and the best-selling novel Bomb Run. Ken Marshall, I'm a big fan of his. If you don't know who Ken Marshall is, every time you see a beautiful illustration of any kind of ship, ocean liner, particularly for me, Titanic, it's just beautiful, chances are he painted it. Ken Marshall created these lifelike paintings of the Lusitania wreck, as well as numerous paintings of her on the surface. Robert Ballard's Lusitania marks the fourth time he has worked with Robert Ballard, the world's foremost painter on the Titanic. His work is prominently featured in Titanic and Illustrated History. And he makes it look so easy. Believe me, my friends, I've tried. I've done a freehand painting, oil painting of the R.M.S. Titanic, and the way mine came out, it looked like a little kid had done it. He makes it look so easy, and his work is phenomenal. I love his paintings. Anyway, let's take a look inside the book. You open it up, and we have the picture of the way she looks today. Well, 2007, that's when this was printed. Probing the Mysteries of the Sinking That Changed History by Dr. Ballard, with Spencer Dunmore, paintings by Ken Marshall. Historical consultation, by R.M.S. And if that name sounds familiar, it was Mr. Sauter who had done the illustrated postcard history of the Lusitania, and he actually autographed my copy of the book for me. So, very, very nice man. Looking on the inside, you can see a beautiful photograph of the Lusitania. The jacket, 2007, Madison Publishing Incorporated. Originally, 1995, Madison Publishing Incorporated. Text, 1995. And there's a lot of the information. The printing, this one was printed in 2007. And I showed you guys the ISBN numbers. She would briefly hold the blue ribbon that she would take over from her sister, Mauritania, but Mauritania would reclaim it and actually have it for a long time. So you can see a lovely picture of her over here. Great heights are reached by standing on the shoulders of others. This book is dedicated to all the scientists, engineers, technicians, and friends who have gone to sea with me over the past 30 years, seen what no one has seen before, and made my dreams their own. So the contents, we got Chapter 1, The Old Head of Kinsale, 1993. Chapter 2, the 202nd Crossing. Chapter 3, The Last Departure. Chapter 4, A Fateful Encounter. Chapter 5, Abandoned Ship. Chapter 6 is Pointing the Finger. Chapter 7 is Exploring the Lusitania. Chapter 8, Lusitania, Then and Now. Chapter 9, What Sank the Lusitania, and the epilogues. Chapter 10, Chronology, and the end matter. So, like I said, I could go through this book page for page, and it would be something amazing to share with you guys. What I want to do is I had points of interest that I had wanted to share with you specifically. The Old Head of Kinsale, 1993. Today, the Old Head of Kinsale on Ireland's southern coast looks much as it did 80 years ago when the Lusitania was sunk within sight of the lighthouse. So this is the final resting place of this magnificent ship. Let's see, the Lusitania's sinking shocked the world of magazine illustrators competed to cover, to convey the horror of it, excuse me. Lots and lots of illustrations. Again, we want to go through some of the things to share with you of importance. The first dive on Lusitania's wreck were made in the 1930s. Despite the impression this illustration gives, those early visits took place in almost total darkness. And again, she's not like Titanic. She's not a mile down. She's only actually in 300 feet of water. Bring in Dr. Ballard. The members of our team confer. Bill Saunders, Ken Marshall, Eric Sauter, and I examine the Lusitania model. Above left, our command vessel, the Northern Horizon, riding at anchor off the Irish coast. Above right, on our after deck, Delta and our ROV Jason are tethered to the cranes used to raise and lower them during our exploration. And the Northern Horizon hull, look at that beautiful ship. Look at the research vessel. I think she's gorgeous. And again, let's go into a few of the points of interest. I didn't have enough bookmarks because, let's face it, the whole book would have been marked off. I just want to go through some points of interest. You can see when she was fitted out in her launch. The Lusitania at the John Brown shipyards before her launch, and below, going down the ways, the Lusitania and her sister Mauritania were prominently displayed in Cunard advertising. More than 20,000 people gathered to witness the Lusitania's launch. So her and her sister Mauritania were definitely special ladies. You can see this is a beautiful picture of her. Surrounded by smaller vessels, the Lusitania steams into New York in September of 1907. And we flash forward to her 202nd crossing. Look at all the carriages. Love it. Oh, and this is a lovely picture. To fuel Lusitania and her sister Mauritania, barges were brought alongside and the coal was dumped through the doors in her side into the bunkers. Before sailing, the ship's stokers busily fed the ship's dozen giant boilers. Those pictures are amazing. I love that. You could tell the difference between Mauritania and Lusitania. Mauritania had many more of the vents going throughout the ship. The luggage wagon, with Lusitania's name clearly marked on the front, pulls up in front of the Cunard Pier in New York City. Now let's see, the picture of the bridge. The Lusitania's enclosed bridge was the preserve of the ship's captain, William Turner. You can see the bridge of the Lusitania. Beautiful. This is one of the points that I wanted to share with you guys. So the announcement appeared on the same page of the New York newspaper as the Cunard advertisement announcing Lusitania's scheduled departure. Now, what the German government did was they actually put notices in a bunch of the papers in the United States warning travelers that if they were going to be on Lusitania, they could potentially be targeted. So let me read the notice to you. Travelers intending to embark on the Atlantic voyage are reminded that the state of war exists between Germany and her allies and Great Britain and her allies. And the zone of war includes the waters adjacent to the British Isles. That, in accordance with formal notice given by the Imperial German government, vessels flying the flag of Great Britain or any of her allies are liable to destruction in those waters, and the travelers sailing in the war zone on the ships of Great Britain and the allies do so at their own risk. German Imperial Embassy. So that's an interesting little advertisement that they had put in the papers around at the time. Let's take a look inside Lusitania. The Lusitania's finest cabins were real regal suites, which featured large bedrooms like the one above and sitting rooms like the one below. The Lusitania's combination of luxury and speed attracted such passengers as millionaire Alfred Vanderbilt. There he is right there. Let's see, this is the second class. For a second-class passenger like Avis Dolphin, sailing on Lusitania meant comfortable shared cabins, opposite and above the cozy public rooms, the top where one could pass the waking hours. Look at that, it's gorgeous. And that's second class. You can see the flyer. I would love to have this advertisement. Cunard Line, 1911, second class cabin rates, plans and proposed sailings. I don't have a lot when it comes to Lusitania. I'm talking about artifacts from the ship. Let's see, is this the third class? Yep, this is the third class cabin. Deep in the ship, access to the open boat decks was restricted to more affluent passengers. Let's see, I'll show some pictures of her. Lusitania sits at her pier on the Hudson River, and As the Lusitania prepared to leave New York, the U-20 was heading north. The destination of the boat was the waters off Liverpool, but to reach them without running into Royal Naval patrols, she had to circle the British Isles, surfacing only at night. Here is the last departure, and look at that beautiful photograph. You can see the Cunard line in New York City. Beneath her stern, the sluggish Hudson River frothed as the turbines began to turn the ship's massive propellers. To witness the Lusitania moving away from its dock was like seeing a city block breaking free of its foundation. Hundreds of passengers lined the rails, waving and taking photos, some laughing and others weeping. Here's another gorgeous illustration by Mr. Marshall. Harbor tugs pushed the great liner's bow to proper position, facing downriver, to make it harder for German ships to identify. The stacks had been painted black and the brass letters at the bow covered up. Lusitania, sitting at dock as in happier pre-war times, with both the ship and the Cunard pier festooned with flags. And she's flying the United States flag, and I think it's the British flag down at the stern, and I think that's the Cunard pennant on the second mast. Here's a nice photograph of one of the lifeboats. Lusitania makes her way down the Hudson, the final view of New York skyscrapers from the harbor. You can see how the lifeboats kind of overhang the side of the ship, as opposed to overhanging the boat deck like Titanic's. Let's see, they had elevators. Onboard amenities enjoyed by first-class passengers included an elevator above. And that was photographed on the Mauretania, so that's the Mauretania, not the Lusitania. The covered promenade deck and the elegant domed dining room. Look at that. Beautiful. I'd love to take my wife to dinner in a tuxedo, dining aboard the Lusitania. Here's a nice picture. Look at that. Beneath the grand dome, the first-class dining room featured Corinthian columns, painted palms, and a menu with a range to satisfy the fare. Let's see. This is on the 4th of July, luncheon, and I can't really, I'm unable to read that, it's too blurry. We get some more photo, and I love the photos of the ship. Look at that absolutely gorgeous room. The sumptuous lounge vied with the first-class dining room for the title of the liner's most elegant showpiece, its stained glass ceiling with lit skylights. Look at that. It's absolutely gorgeous. I would love to see a video of this room or colored photos. Just spectacular ship. We have more of the amenities. In the warmer weather, the first-class passengers could gather in the veranda. This will be the Veranda Cafe. And again, I told you guys I wasn't going to go by it page for page, but so far, there's so much to share with you guys. This is the second class. The second class public rooms included the ladies' drawing room, which is at the right. With the picture, rather inexplicably features more men than women. Below, the souvenir paperweights sold in the Lusitania's barbershop, and I would love to get one of those. All the second-class public rooms were located towards the stern of the ship, in the deckhouse that was physically separated from the areas reserved for the first-class passengers. Look at that. Just beautiful. And we go to the third class now. And even the accommodations for the third class are lovely. In third class, there were no pretensions toward making the ship look like a hotel or county house. country house, The highly functional nature of the third class is evident from the brochure the Cunard issued. Everything from the companionways, top right, to the smoking room, upper right, to in the ladies' sitting room, lower right, to the vast dining saloon, above and bottom right, in use has been the same bare-bones look designed for the hard use and ease of upkeep. All right, let's see. And let's see, third class cabin. All right, let's take a look at the deck. During a pre-war crossing, passengers take the air on the ship's boat deck. Named the boat deck because it was where the lifeboats were kept. It was also the largest open area on the ship, which made it a popular place to gather in good weather. Here's another nice photograph. The lifeboats being tested in the harbor. The liner carried enough lifeboats for all on board, but passengers had not been told which boat to go to in events of emergencies. Okay, now let's go into another interesting point for you. By the time Lusitania was approaching the war zone near the British Isle, U-20 had worked her way around Ireland and was actively seeking victims. Evidently, it didn't matter whether they were armed or not. Let's see another beautiful illustration. Let's see, we go into the war at sea. Let's see. The fateful encounter. The Lusitania, making speed in peacetime by 1915, several of her boilers were closed down as an economic measure, so that she was running well below her top speed of 26 knots. So that's of interesting note. Made her an easier target. You can see an absolutely spectacular illustration from Ken Marshall. Few moments after the initial explosion, the Lusitania was rocked by a far more powerful secondary explosion, which threw debris and water high into the air. Note the position. And you can see this illustration for the damage. After the ship was hit, there was confusion about the nature of the two explosions, although most agreed that a torpedo had hit forward, near, or under the bridge. Some people were convinced that the second torpedo had hit the ship further aft, between the third and fourth funnels, with far more devastating results. And in the illustration, I don't know if you're going to be able to read that, you can see where the promenade deck is, the shelter deck. The dotted line represents approximate height of water and debris thrown up by the explosion. And this area is the area affected. Rivets started to etch. Approximate size of the vast hole caused by the torpedo. And you can see the torpedo going in. And again, this is just below the water line. And that would be on the starboard side of the ship. So here we have another illustration. So the death throes of a Leviathan. Within 5 minutes of the torpedoing, the Lusitania was doomed already, listing badly to starboard. The ship literally plowing its way deeper into the water, pushed on by its powerful turbines. So looking at the illustrations, you can see one, and I'll put a diagram up as I read this. Outside the grand entrance on the boat deck, a large crowd gathered. No lifeboat drills had been held for passengers during the crossing. And uncertain what to do, they mulled about, waiting for instructions. And number 2, on the starboard side, the number 1 and number 3 boats were being lowered. The number 5 boat had disappeared, blown off by the davits after the explosion. Number 3, one of the few signs of damaged topside was a lid missing from one of Lusitania's forward ventilators. It had been blown off by a powerful second explosion. Number 4, down at the aft, in those few minutes, another large group of passengers from deep within the ship had poured onto the top deck, the second-class deckhouse. And finally, number 5, still at its high point, the Lusitania's wing bridge, Captain Turner attempted to maneuver the ship towards the Irish coast in hopes of beaching the ship. You can see another illustration. This stylized period illustration shows the Lusitania going down a fairly even keel as the Irish fishermen raced to the rescue. In fact, the launch of the lifeboats was considerably more chaotic than is shown here. And one can only imagine. And again, this is a beautiful illustration. It's sad to see any ship sink, especially needlessly. The Lusitania's rapidly growing list to starboard and the crew's inexperience hampered attempts to launch the lifeboats on the port side. Portside boats had to slide down the side of the ship. On the starboard side, several boats tipped over on launching. And you can see a few more illustrations of lowering the lifeboats, and there's another stunning illustration. Toward the end, the Lusitania began slipping away on a shallow angle. Many lifeboats remained unlaunched, and hundreds of people were washed off the decks in the final moments. An illustration of the aftermath. And you can see a photograph. Once she had gone, eyewitnesses reported that an enormous mass of foaming water appeared in the sea, probably the last air escaping from the liner. Here's another illustration that I had wanted to share with you guys. The lady vanishes. The first step to Lusitania's death throes begin after the second explosion set off by the torpedoes. The next illustration is still plowing ahead. The ship starts to list. The worst thing you could do is keep going forward momentum with the water. It would just make the water rush in that much faster. 3, she starts to go below the waterline, then righting slightly, she sails under the waves towards the bottom. And lastly, the last air bursts from the ship as she hits the sea floor on the starboard side. Again, that's so sad. Let's see, here are some photos, historic photos. You got the lifeboats. You guys remember a similar picture with Titanic, all that had remained. This is all that remains of Lusitania. Let's see, what's that picture? Small boy plays in a Lusitania lifeboats left that had been towed into Queenstown. And again, the aftermath. A flag-draped body of an American casualty is carried through the streets of Queenstown. This is pointing the finger in this chapter. You can see the Cunard Line's company location. In London, crowds gathered outside the Cunard office for the news of the sinking. Enraged by the disaster, angry British mobs attacked businesses with German names, in this case, ransacking a German-owned barber shop. And this is, I had wanted to show you guys this as well. A little closer for us, or for me. The New York Times, you can see the page. Lusitania sunk by a submarine. Probably 1,260 dead, twice torpedoed off the Irish coast, sinks in 15 minutes. Captain Turner saved, Frohman and Vanderbilt missing. Washington believes that a grave crisis is at hand. So 1,260. They were really close to the final number. You can see other publications, the Daily Mirror. Matter of fact, the Daily Mirror, I had shown you guys a video of the sinking of the Titanic in that paper from 1912. You can see the Daily Sketch and the printing of the time period. It's fascinating to go back into that time. Lusitania survivors line up the tickets at Queenstown train station. What is this ship? Let's see. When the Lusitania sank, President Woodrow Wilson in his cabinet had yet responded to the German torpedo. The week before, the American tanker Gulfite was hit with the loss of 3 lives. You can see that. Can you see the damage? Yeah, this is of historical significance, but the Germans, the Lusitania, were munitions carrying merchant cruiser caught in a war zone. Captain Turner after the sinking. This one I had wanted to show you just because of the time period. Look at the absolutely beautiful, and I don't mean any disrespect. I just think that hearse is absolutely spectacular. It's the clear glass. It makes me think of the hearse used when President Lincoln was carried to his funeral. Just an amazing vehicle back then. But you can see in the days after the sinking, hundreds of bodies washed up were brought ashore. The dead are placed in coffins at the Central Yard in Cunard. The casket is loaded into a hearse, and the funeral processions make its way through Queenstown. So the aftermath is, as with any tragedy, devastating. And look at the mass grave. Clergymen conduct a service at one of the mass burials for the Lusitania's dead. It's just a powerful photo. Another point of historical significance. In June of 1915, the British Board of Trade launched its official inquiry at Westminster Hall. Heading it was Lord Mersey, the same judge who had conducted the official investigation in the loss of the Titanic. So, if that name sounds familiar, that is why. Here's another historical significance photo. The Lusitania ambulances. One lasting legacy of the disaster were the so-called Lusitania ambulances, capitalizing on the nationalistic fervor surrounding the sinking. Cunard donated a pair of ambulances for war service dedicated by Lady Booth, wife of Cunard's chairman. In a service outside the Liverpool Cunard office, the ambulances saw service in France. And I must apologize. I said I wouldn't go through page for page, but there's just so much to share in this. We have the propaganda war. You can see lifeboat from Lusitania. Such a poignant photograph would rouse the faintest hearts against Germany. But on closer observation, the Lusitania's name is much larger than the ship's real lifeboats, and the innocent child victims seem to be having trouble staying in character. Recruiting poster strikes a more exalted tone. So this was actually staged. This was not an actual photograph. That was a recruiting inducement. You can see more recruiting. Irishmen avenged the Lusitania. Joined the Irish regiment today. More calls to enlist. And finally, we flash forward. Now we're going to explore the Lusitania. And you can see she's lying on her starboard side. And this is Ken Marshall's depiction. Absolutely spectacular. Above, that's this photo right here. Jason recovered after the night dive. The submarine Delta illuminates the Lusitania's name, still visible on her bow. And taking a look on the inside, you can see the monitor station, Dr. Ballard. Our control center aboard Northern Horizon was a converted ship container outfitted with an array of computers and television monitors. Another container had stored our submarine. That's a beautiful ship in her own right. Okay. To aid our exploration, we developed a computer map of the ship from sonar signals. Over this, we imposed the ship's outline. You can see the technology. A lot more technological advancement when he found Lusitania than when he found Titanic. Remember, he found Titanic in '85, and he found the Lusitania much later. To launch our submarine Delta, the first step was to hoist her over the side of the ship, then lower her into the water. Let's see, Delta moves in closely to examine the rudder of the Lusitania. Typically, the submarine carries a crew of two, one pilot and one observer, who looks through the round windows in the submarine's conning tower. Man, can you imagine how amazing that would be for a job to go down there? And now we go into Chapter 8, where we look at the Lusitania, then versus now. And you can see the section of the ship is right there at the bow. And I love that picture. Look, you can see Lusitania's name. The Lusitania today lies on her starboard side, almost 300 feet down. Although time has been hard on her, it is still possible to find connections between the wreck and the blue ribbon winning pride of the Cunard line. The outline of the ship's name is still visible on the bow. And combining in numerous photographs, it is possible to spell it fully. The Lusitania's name, as it originally appeared, is below. We have some more pictures of the exploration of the ship. We've got the bow. You can see the section right over there. The ship, Delta, explores the starboard bow. Here's another beautiful, beautiful illustration by Mr. Marshall. You can see all the nets. And now we bring you to the pullout is actually a diagram. So what I want to do is I'm going to put a picture up and we're going to go through the wreck site. So the R.M.S. Lusitania, as she appears today. The decades at the bottom have taken a toll on Lusitania. Today she lies on her starboard side, her hull twisted and badly broken, her superstructure gone, and her deck slowly sliding away. Within the wreckage, however, it is still possible to find connections with the proud Edwardian liner. So, looking at part 1, I direct your attention, we got the small crane mounted on the bow. Number 2, we got the foremast. Number 3, we have the water tanks. Number 4, the first class bathtub with shower. Number 5, we got the steam pipes and the remains of the smokestacks. Directing your attention to number 6, we got the round well for domed ceiling, the first class dining room. 7 is the skylight. 8 is the main mast. Number 9 is the cargo and passenger doors. Number 10, round well for the second class dining room. Number 11 is the docking bridge, and number 12 is the rudder. So when we flip it over, we've got the then versus now, and I've used this in countless, actually when I did the history of the Lusitania, I used a lot from this book. And looking at this illustration, we got the small crane. We direct your attention to part 1. This small crane is visible in the wreckage in the foredeck today. It is here that Lookouts Leslie Martin spotted the torpedo and then left his post to warn his brother. Directing your attention to number 2, the Lusitania's name had been painted out in an attempt to disguise her identity from the Germans. Number 3, the next man to spot the approaching torpedo was Lookout Thomas Quinn, stationed here, the crow's nest on Lusitania's foremast. Both mast and lookout posts were visible in the wreckage. Number 4, atop the bridge, the compass platform was added. Number 5, the U-20's fatal torpedo hit in approximately this area just below the Lusitania's bridge. The color of the Lusitania's stacks has been changed from Cunard traditional to red and black to all black to disguise her identity. So this is towards her end, that the smokestacks were actually painted black. Directing your attention to number 7 is the second compass platform was added. Number 8, immediately after the torpedoing, large crowds gathered here outside the main entrance of the first class. Many witnesses reported seeing Alfred Vanderbilt standing near the entrance, making no attempt to save himself. Moving on, I direct your attention to number 9. From this post inside Lusitania's radio shack, here, radio operator Robert Leaf, who I'd shown you earlier, frantically tapped an SOS. Number 10, in a last-minute attempt to save the two of them, Edith Williams tried to pull her little sister up this ladder before the rising waves engulfed them both. Number 11, the location of the ship's Vendetta Cafe. Oliver Ballard was standing by on the starboard rail here when the torpedo had struck. Directing your attention aft to number 12, the aft deck house, home to the second-class dining room and sitting rooms. Number 13, the aft docking bridge. Today this bridge has been torn away from the ship and lies nearby, upside down. And finally, number 14 is the jackstaff. Again, as part of Cunard attempts to confuse the Germans about their identity of the ship, the Lusitania flew no flags during her final voyage. And that was the pull-out section and the reference material. And you can see now that the foredeck photograph is the way she appeared then and the way she appears now. Let's see, this would be a smokestack. Lusitania's triple chrome chime whistle was mounted on the foremost funnel and was almost 3 feet high. Today it lies in a sandbar near the liner, which is pictured above. The steam pipes, which also lie on the bottom. We have the water tanks. You can see the location on the ship where they would have been. Let's see. Look at that. How the shower looked when installed. That would be that one. So the shower in the tub. Look at that. And let's see, this is the door to the side of the ship was used for passenger entry. You can see the door as it would have looked when she was on her voyage. And I think this is, look at that, the propeller. And this is midship, the boilers. The Lusitania's boiler room, specifically number 4, which had been shut down as an economy measure and was not in use on her final voyage. So had she been at full speed, she might have been able to evade the torpedo. And let's see, I do have... All right, this is the docking bridge, as it appears now, and that's aft. The poop deck, the propeller and rudder. In the rudder, you can see a picture of Dr. Ballard with the propeller. Let's see. The Lusitania's rudder is still in place, but the bottom had been broken off. The propeller and the rudder, they looked in the place on the right with the top propellers today in Welsh scrapyards. That's a large propeller. The engine room. You can see the section. And again, guys, I'm sorry. I don't want this video to be a year long. There's just so much relevant information to show you in this book. Because the superstructure had slid away over the years, it is possible to look right into the engine room. It was badly battered. But there are features that make it recognizable, notably the metal girder running across the room and the remains of the metal catwalk, as shown above. Let's see. We go to chapter 9 now, and it's titled, What Sank the Lusitania? Winston Churchill was accused of allowing the sinking. Homer probes under Lusitania's keel. Look at the fishy. Again, Marshall illustration. Stunningly beautiful. And now we look in some information on the explosion. When the Lusitania was torpedoed off Ireland, her coal bunkers were almost empty. The explosion kicked up large amounts of coal dust that blanketed the bottom of the bunkers, and that the torpedo ignited lower right, tearing open the side of the ship from the length of one of the starboard bunkers. The ship's magazine, the red area, remained undamaged. Above, the coal scattered over the bottom of the sea was one of the clues that led us to believe that the second explosion was caused by ignited coal dust. And remember, if that doesn't sound realistic, think about even something that's like gasoline. The fumes of the gasoline are very volatile as well, so it's very possible that the coal dust would have caused an explosion. And it talks about the Mauretania briefly. Lusitania's lucky sister. And I'm just going to show you this picture. This is Mauretania alongside the tiny Turbinina, the world's first turbine-powered ship. The part of the war Mauretania served as a troop ship, and you can see her all painted up in camouflage. But Mauretania, a beautiful ship in her own right, and held the blue ribbon. Man, I think she held the blue ribbon for just about 25 years. You can see Dr. Ballard and his team. It's a pretty cool photograph. On October of 1982, Oceaneering International mounts an expedition to the wreck and recovers a number of artifacts. Ireland attempts to claim recovered items as national treasures. Courts rule in favor of the salvagers. 1983, international plans to return to the wreck this year to document cargo hold, but the expedition never takes place. 1989, a salvage whistle and bells sold at auction. And in 1993, Ballard expedition visits the wreck of the Lusitania. Although time fades and the little gray cells get worn out, I can still sit here now and see the liner, just sliding beneath the waves. Eyewitness George Henderson recalling the sinking of the Lusitania 80 years ago. This is the last picture of the Lusitania on her final voyage. And going to the end, this is the end matter. We have the acknowledgments. The bibliography and all of the indexes. And like I said, I'm sorry guys, I didn't mean to make this video so long, but there was just so much I had wanted to share with you about the information on this wonderful ship and all the work that Dr. Ballard and his team put into finding her. I've used this book so much. Man, I had an original copy when it first came out, and it was much more expensive. I think I paid like $30, and I think that was at Walden Books. But I ended up losing it. I don't know what happened to it, but I ended up getting another one maybe 5 years ago. And I'm glad I did, because this is a book. Any Robert Ballard fan, if you have the Bismarck, the Titanic information, and all the different books that Robert Ballard wrote, you would love this one. And if you're a fan of the ship as well, you owe it to yourself to get this book. Again, I use this for a lot of information, and we're going to be using a lot of it for the model. And speaking of the model, look for the video. We're going to be doing an unboxing at the beginning of a build series for a 1350 Revell Lusitania. So my friends, until that video, thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys really soon.